Think we're live? Are we? Cool. Hey everyone, welcome to another Webflow workshop. I am your host Nelson. Thank you for joining me this week. This is episode 129. This is a sneak peek at CSS Grid inside of Webflow. This is a thing that we've been working on for a while now, and it is a highly upvoted, highly requested feature on our wish list over at wishlist.webflow.com. And I saw a demo of this last week and it blew my mind that we can create layouts, unique layouts, much faster than we can with Flexbox. Flexbox is really good, but Grid is just a whole nother level. So without further ado, this sneak peek we're here with Linda, and she's the product manager of the team who worked on CSS Grid inside of Webflow, and she's going to give us a demo of it today and explain how it's going to affect the way you design inside of Webflow. So thank you so much for being here, Linda.
Thank you for having me, Nelson. As Nelson stated, my name is Linda, and I'm a product manager here at Webflow. Now, over the past few months, our team has been working on a new layout feature for Webflow that we're calling Grid.
Yeah.
Now, as the name might suggest, we were trying to figure out how to help users build grid-based layouts more easily using Webflow. And we actually built it on top of CSS Grid. Now, for those who stay up to date on news around CSS, CSS Grid is a new layout system in addition to the language that has hit high popularity over the last few months to a year. And a big reason why is because it solves this old age problem of how to build grids on the web easily.
Yeah.
And I would personally say quite elegantly as well. So what we did is we took CSS Grid and all of the power behind it, and we figured out how to build it so that we can give you and all of our users access to many of its benefits, but yet still visually through Webflow.
Yeah. So, a lot of people are asking, I noticed there's some people in the chat room right now asking, what is the difference between Flexbox and CSS Grid? Do I have to use one or the other? Can I use both? So where does it live?
That's actually a really, really good question. And the one thing I want to start off with is Grid was not designed to replace Flexbox. They actually work together really, really well. Both of them are layout systems that are built for different reasons, different use cases. Grid, similar to Flex, allows you to define a set of rules that determines how its children will behave, like its placements, its position inside of it. But while Flexbox allows you to define these rules in a single direction or dimension, just vertically or just horizontally, Grid allows you to define these rules in both directions at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And it actually uses a pretty basic concept that's quite familiar to most people, rows and columns.
Yeah. Okay, so
sorry.
So go ahead.
I wanted to just to give you a better example. Flexbox is really, really great for layouts that are generally much more linear in nature.
Yeah.
But then for more elaborate or complex layouts, the ones where you need to explicitly place an item on very specific X and Y axis. Yeah. Those are the layouts that's really, really great for Grid. And what's also really great about using Grid for these more elaborate layouts is that you don't have to create so many div wrappers and containers that you do need to create when creating something as similar in Flex.
Yeah, that always got confusing for me whenever I'm tasked to do a unique, complex layout. Trying to understand the relationship in Flexbox of parent and child, and then making sure I'm using the right grow or shrink or even basis. When do I use that? So I'm always just experimenting, and it's not really that great. And so you're going to show us a live demo of building something in Grid. So I think that's what most people are excited about in this stream. So to everyone in the chat room right now, thank you so much for being here live. If you're not in the chat room and you're just watching recording, thank you for watching this. You can ask your questions in the Ask Question button at the bottom of the page, and we'll get to those towards the end of the stream. But for now, let's see how Grid inside of Webflow works. So let's change this.
Before I actually start the demo, I want to.
Okay.
No,
Sorry.
no, you can
Okay.
switch over. But I wanted to call out, and you'll notice this in the demo too. While we were implementing Grid, one of our core focus was to figure out how we can introduce more on-canvas controls.
Oh yeah.
And what's really nice, and what that means essentially, is that we wanted our users, to be able to directly manipulate the children of the grid right there on canvas and not just in the styles panel, which is a really big deal for Webflow. And it's actually the aspect that I like the most about the feature.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, again, in Flexbox, making sure that you're doing the right things and you're only using the styles panel, you're not manipulating anything really on the grid for sizing, is really tough. And that's the part of the demo that I saw last week that like blew my mind. I was like, I can play with the divs and the sizing on canvas. That is nuts. So I know you guys are excited. I'm excited. Let's get into this demo.
So for the demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate the jazz poster example made by Jen Simmons. Now, Jen Simmons played a massive role in developing the CSS Grid spec. She has also created a number of tutorials and examples that showcase the power of CSS Grid. So in that same spirit, we're going to use one of her more popular examples, the jazz poster, to show what you can do with Grid, but yet again in the Webflow context. Cool. So here is the jazz poster in front of you, and I'm just going to scroll through this relatively quickly. There's two things that I want to note in this layout. One is that there is a lot of white space that she uses throughout this page. And white space generally is a little bit more difficult to do with the existing layout system. Is that right, Nelson?
Yeah.
So, and then the second thing that I also want to point out is that while these items, these pink blocks, are perfectly aligned on the horizontal axis, they're also perfectly aligned on the vertical axis as well. So that's the two-dimensionality that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So let me just jump straight into the designer. So what I'm going to start with is an empty page with a background. Now, the first thing I want to do is add a grid to the canvas. There's two ways to do this. One, you can jump into the Add panel and drag in this handy dandy grid widget right there onto canvas.
Okay.
The second way is to literally add any element from the Add panel, such as this div block, and apply grid as a display property.
Nice.
Before I do that though, I'm going to give it a class, and then I'm going to also give it a height. So once I apply grid to this div, I enter what we call the grid template mode. Now in this mode, you get to define the grid container, and that means the number of columns, the number of rows. It means the size of each column and row. It also means the space or the gap between each column and row. So obviously my next step would be to figure out how many columns and rows I actually need. So I'm going to jump back to the jazz poster, and I'm just going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then for the sake of time for this demo, I'm actually only just going to build the top 4 rows.
Okay.
So over here, there's 2 ways to add columns and rows. One is the on canvas plus button right here.
Nice.
And then the second way is the plus button in the rows, in the styles panel. The other thing that you can do is change the size of each column and row, either here or here.
Okay.
You can change the unit. You can also add in min and max values as needed. For this example, I'm actually not going to change any of those values. And the last thing that you can do is change the gap between the column and rows. I'm going to lock these 2 inputs and actually change both of this to 8 pixels.
Okay.
Now that I have the grid container, the next thing I want to do is add in my first element. And my first element is actually this pink block right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use quick find. If feature that just launched last week.
Yay!
And I'm going to search for a div block. Now, as you can see, I can literally drag this div block anywhere on the canvas as long as it's within the grid container. Not only that, but once I drop it, I can still pick it up again and drag it to the right position. This is one of the first on-canvas controls for the grid items that you've seen just yet. What I'm going to do now is add in a class. And give me a few seconds to add in some content here. Bebop lives, along with a paragraph, and deleting some of this unnecessary text. Perfect. So now I have my first pink block. In the Jazz poster, there's more than one pink block.
Yeah.
So I'm going to add in those missing ones. So I'm going to simply copy and paste it, and yet again, drag it wherever I want it to go.
So the new copy goes right on top.
The new copy does paste right on top. You can also use the shortcut option drag to copy and duplicate as well. So now that I have my pink blocks, I'm just going to quickly change the title here so it's easier to distinguish between them. Dr. White's
Yeah.
Quartet and New York Symphony.
A lot of people's mind are already blown in the chat room right now.
I'm excited to see that. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is build out this title here. Now, this looks somewhat tricky just because it obviously doesn't fit into one column. It actually, it looks like it spans across more than one column.
Yeah.
So, luckily, with Grid, we actually made this really easy, and it actually showcases another one of the on-canvas manipulations that you can do. So I'm going to add in a heading here. I'm going to add a class title. And then I'm going to, not sure if you noticed this, but there are these white drag handles here at the corner. So I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag. And I'm able to make this item span across as many cells as I want in the horizontal or vertical direction at the same time. In this case, I'm only adding it here. Jazz at Lincoln Center, spring 2019.
Nuts.
So I have about maybe 50% of the designs ready already, and
Yeah.
it's only been a few minutes. This Jazz at Lincoln Center looks close to the original version, but if you notice, Jazz at Lincoln Center is actually centered in the row. So now how Grid deals with alignment is that within a Grid container, you can define the alignments of all of its children right here. By default, it's stretched both horizontally and vertically, but you can also change it to any of these controls. For this one, you can actually override the alignment for individual items by selecting the item and going to this Align Self control here.
Okay.
In this case, I'm going to change it to Center.
That's it.
Now, one last thing I want to show you before
Yeah.
I finish this desktop layout, and that's, it actually touches on a point that I made earlier, that Flex can actually work really, really well with Grid. And the way I'm going to show this is by actually nesting both a Grid container, i.e. nesting a grid inside of a grid, but then also showing you how we can nest a Flex container inside of a Grid container.
So you're saying we have Grid, and we're gonna put Grid inside of Grid, and then Flex inside of that grid.
We could do that.
Oh, okay,
In this
so-
example, I'm actually just going to switch it back and forth between Grid
Oh,
and Flex.
Okay.
So I'm going to add in this div block, and I'm
Okay.
going to span it yet again across two columns. And I'm going to give it the class ticket content. And then I need to add children so that I can actually manipulate it. So I'm
Okay.
going to add in a div block and give it ticket block. And in that ticket block, I'm going to add in a paragraph. Let's make this our little ticket box. So tickets on sale today. And give it the class paragraph. Oops, no, actually ticket copy. Cool. And then I'm going to add in the second child. So it's another div block with the same class as the previous one. I'm actually going to make it look slightly different just so that it's easier to see the difference. And in that ticket block, I'm going to add in a button. the class button. Perfect. So now I have a container that has 2 children.
Yeah.
And as easily as everything else works in Webflow, I can apply the grid display property to it. Now, as you can see, each child ended up in its own cell automatically. Likewise, I can also change it to flex. I'm just going to add a 50% width here, just to make it look better. So as I was able to easily nest a flex container right in the grid. And flex, for me at least, using flex on this is more simple just because it's a linear layout.
Yeah.
So yeah, now I have the desktop layout, and I did that within record time.
10 minutes less?
Yeah,
And
probably.
it's only 10:15, and man, everyone is getting excited in the chat room. Thank you for that demo for the desktop. And so one of the things, at least for many people who are using Webflow for the first time, or graphic designers who are coming into web design, the hardest part of layouts is responsive design. So can you show us a demo of how you would use grid inside of tablet, mobile, landscape, and mobile portrait?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just jump right into it. So I'm not sure if you noticed, but everything that I've changed within the grid has been styles, right?
Yeah.
Where these things are placed, and even everything from the number of columns, rows, the size of them, they're all styles. And what this means is that all of these styles are inherited and cascades down to
Okay.
the smaller media queries, as we would expect. But it also means that they're also overridable in the smaller media queries. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm just going to start moving things around to make it look better on tablet. So I'm going to move this title up here, and I'm going to make it span all the way across the top row.
Okay.
I'm actually going to change the order here real fast. I'm going to take this pink block, I'm going to move it down here, and I'm going to make it span halfway in the container. And same thing with this.
So with Flexbox, doing it like this and moving things around, it would be very complicated because you'd be using like wrap children, order, first, last.
Exactly. And for this one, it's a very simple click and move. And for the ticket content, I'm going to span across the bottom row. So now, as you would want and now expect, you wouldn't want any of these changes, despite the fact that I was moving things around, making it bigger, resizing them. You wouldn't want to see any of those changes on a desktop view, and magically, you don't.
Oh my God.
Still, though, you'll see those changes cascade all the way down to the smallest media query. And these aren't just simple item movements, right? Like you can literally go into the grid container and add an entire new row. So you see this new row here, you see the new row here, you see the new row here, but you won't see the new row here. And so you can manipulate the grid in any way on a different media queries to make it responsive and make it look the way that you want.
That part to me is just mind-blowing because like laying things out for responsiveness is always the hardest part of doing projects. And before my head explodes even further, I might need a helmet, but whoa. Thanks to you and your team for building responsiveness much easier. That is insane. Yeah, so are people seeing it in the chat room right now? People are going nuts. It's only been like 10:19 and you made it responsive.
Yeah, sorry for going so fast.
No, isn't that the point? To streamline our workflow? You don't have to say sorry. We should be saying thank you to you and the grid team.
There's one last thing I want to show you.
Sure.
So I've been adding things and moving things around, but what's actually happening in the navigator and the structure of everything, right? So if you flip over to the navigator here, you can see that there is one wrapper, the grid container, that has a grid. And inside of it is just a clean list of all of its direct children. Just to have a point of comparison, I actually made this layout using Flex as well.
Oh.
So I'm going to flip over here. So as you can see, I had to create a lot of different horizontal Flex containers. And not only that, but within each horizontal Flex containers, I actually introduced these empty divs in order to position this item where I want it to be. So the structure itself is a lot more complex using Flex here. But not only that, but it actually was pretty difficult to try to get everything's aligned horizontally because yet again in Flex you get to define the rules in one direction. But it was much harder to figure out how to align everything on the vertical axis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the grid demo.
I have no I have no other words but like thank you, and then this is, for me at least, it's going to change the game and how I build inside of Webflow, and maybe a lot of people in the chat room. So I mean, we have so much time left. I didn't expect it to go this fast, but that was a no. What do you guys think in the chat room? We can go ahead and go into the Q&As. We already have, we have 20 questions right now. You want to get into it?
Absolutely.
Let's go. First question, and the top upvoted question with 9 votes. Will using the new CSS Grid tool allow me to lose weight and spend more time with my kids? Oh, I need to start answering that one. Okay, so will it help? Will it? I guess yes. Technically yes, because as you can see, this saves us a lot of time to create this unique layout, and it gives you more time to do whatever you need to do with your family or for your own benefit. So the answer is yes. Thank you for the question, Thomas. We got one from Daniel. Will there be any support for fallback for browsers without grid layout?
Absolutely. We can't forget about those other browsers who don't support it. I would like to point out, though, that Grid has actually gotten pretty widespread support across majority of the browsers. But no matter what, we will be pushing out fallback support just to make sure that your published site will work on a lot of different older browsers.
Okay, cool. All right. Let's see here. I think we've already answered it, Daniel. Will CSS Grid replace Flexbox? And
it's CSS Grid and Flexbox will remain in our product for the time for the future that I can foresee. Yet again, they're both very, very useful layout system, and you might find yourself adopting yourself to one more than the other, which is completely okay. But CSS Grid, yet again, is better for the more elaborate two-dimensional layouts, while Flexbox is really great for that linear.
Yeah.
And I would highly recommend using one inside of the other as well.
Yeah. Like we saw in the demo. Thank you for the question, Daniel. Okay. Oh, yeah. Big question from Nicholas. Release date.
So we're still working. So with Grid, we're actually planning a series of launches. And our first launch, we're hoping to happen at somewhere in the beginning of October. So very, very soon. We're still working out some of the kinks and the bugs, but the minute that we have it ready, it'll be in your hands.
Nice. So October. Just wait a little longer. We got this. You can wait. Ooh, good question from Mark. How will this work with dynamic content?
Also a really good question. So in terms of using this in like the item detail page, you'll be able to use it there. You'll also be able to add it into individual collection list items. For the first release, we won't support Grid for the collection list itself, but in the next few weeks after the initial launch, we will be adding support to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. Let's see here.
Oh, and in terms of how it will be supported for the collection list, the idea is that each item will yet again fall into its own cell automatically.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. From Sebastian from the designer news community, he says, "Will there be a flexboxgame.com? Will there be a game kind of like flexboxgame.com to help us learn Grid?"
Well, secretly, as a product manager, and I know our design team feels the same, we're hoping that we built Grid well enough where you guys can just pick it up as quickly as possible. But we are planning to build something similar to the Flexbox game to show everyone everything that's possible in using Grid within Webflow.
Okay, cool. Let's see here. Brian's asking... Oh, Grid and Flexbox will work together. They are better at different things.
I think he was answering a
question. Oh, okay. He was
there.
answering his... Oh, okay. Let's see here. From Robert, can we use CSS Grid for things that were otherwise not possible in Webflow, or is it is it more of a faster and handier way to achieve certain kind of goals?
What I love about Webflow is that no matter what you want to build, there's ways to stretch the system to figure out how to build that very complex thing. And it's still true to this day. And what Grid allows us to do is build something that previously forced us to stretch our creativity, and now it just makes it a lot simpler and easier to do. It's just a less painful way to create a lot of these elaborate layouts that you want to create.
Yep, I agree. Thank you for the question. Here's Jason. Okay, I think we've already answered that. Same question. Benefits of using Grid versus Flexbox. I mean,
We can, and I'm almost positive with the launch we'll be sharing some content around that as well in terms of when we use one versus the other.
Yeah, probably like a blog post or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that's currently planned for our content team.
From Landon, can today's stream viewers have access to the beta? I mean, we like to put out quality stuff even in beta as close to pristine or perfect as possible. So
actually for Grid, this is one of the few features that we have that we won't be doing a beta. We've tested it with a lot of users, and at this point, the minute that it's ready, it's actually just going to go out to everybody.
Okay. All right. Just hang in there, Landon. Let's go. Let me see if I can go to the bottom. So from Wadud, will McGuire narrate tutorial videos about CSS Grid?
So for those who don't know, McGuire is the voice behind our university videos. We pay him top dollars, so but yeah, so McGuire will be creating McGuire and our education team will be creating a number of videos with Grid that will be released with the launch and a few after that as well. It will range from purely educational videos explaining what Grid is for and how to use it, but we're also going to pair it with some tutorial videos as well to teach you how to create very specific layouts using Grid as the base.
Okay. Yep. Education team is always on top of it, so yeah, you will learn. You will learn. Let's go here. Raphael's asking, is it planned to create different shapes than boxes like an L?
You will be able to create an L by adding two boxes next to each other, but right now we're not looking to create any type of shapes outside of the boxes. One thing that I've learned,
during the demo, one of our customer success team members, I think it was Andrew, he was like, can we put interactions on the divs that are inside of the grid? And I just wanted to learn it on my own. So I did a scrolling interaction with one of the divs, and yes, you can put interactions. And I did that demo just like the Jen Simmons page, and I just made one box move on the x-axis as I'm scrolling up and down, and it is possible. So Parallax is gonna get crazier. Oh, so excited to put it into your hands. It's gonna be so much fun. Let's see here. Let's go to Matt. I'm just randomly picking questions because they're not upvoted. But yeah, if you have a similar question, go ahead and upvote that rather than asking it in the Ask a Question link. But yeah, one thing I'd like to know, what happens if I build a website with CSS Grid, then export it? Is it pretty easy enough to change the code manually without having to go through the Webflow designer?
Good question. And to answer this, I guess it depends on each person's level of skill. But CSS Grid does introduce new syntax into the language. And so as long as you get familiar with that syntax, it is pretty easy to go into the code and change the number of columns or the column size or even the position of specific items.
Okay. All right. All right, let me...
Grid is based off of the CSS Grid spec, so all of the code that gets exported matches the spec perfectly. So there should be not just obviously our university content, but also all of the external content around CSS Grid that will help you get comfortable with the feature.
Okay. Here's a good one from Luca. Designing for larger screens has always been an issue and a highly requested feature. Is the introduction of CSS Grid going to come along with the possibility to set widescreen layout options that could also include the standard built-in nav bar?
So the larger screen has been one of the highly requested features on our wish list, and it is on our radar as something that we need to build soon. But CSS Grid is an entirely separate feature from that. Please contact us through the wish list, and we'll try to give you a better approximate in terms of when we are looking to support that. There are workarounds, though, to make sure that your website works on larger screens, and we can share that with you after the workshop.
Okay. Here we go from Jose. I've been working on a project where the client wanted a masonry grid. If you're not familiar with masonry, it's kind of like Pinterest. I think they were the first ones to do it, or
I'm not sure that
it got very popularized by Pinterest. So using a multicolor column layout can be challenging. Curious if CSS Grid could be used to create a masonry grid.
Unfortunately, the answer is a no. CSS Grid was not designed to support Masonry Grid, though you'll find online that people have done a few hacks to make it support it. Yeah, and there are other, obviously, ways to do it in Webflow, like using the text columns. I believe Anna from our team's done a little tutorial on that as well. But yeah, CSS Grid is not designed to do the Masonry Grid.
Yep. Thank you, Jose. All right. Okay, I think I've already answered this. Chris Cannon, who's watching our YouTube stream, is asking, if IX2 is going to work on Grid out of the gate, and yes, it will. Matt's asking, can you show an example of how to layer elements using Grid and or using areas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we sharing the screen?
Yeah, we can share the screen. Okay.
So I believe what you're asking is how do we create overlaying layouts, and it's actually quite simple, and this isn't going to look great.
Yeah.
But as you can see, I can easily layer this so that it's right here on top of this.
Oh.
Similar to here, I can actually layer this so that one is on top of the other, or even better, maybe this here. Now, in terms of what goes on top or below, you can mess with that via the Z index, or even just changing the order of this here. So if I move this title here, the title will be on top.
So now the navigator is kind of acting like a layers panel rather than, oh my.
Right, so as you can see, the order of these elements doesn't actually affect where these are positioned, because we want you to be able to position items anywhere you want. But it will affect what is layered on top versus the bottom.
Wow.
So it's extremely, so outside of just being able to create all of this white space, it's really great if you want to create overlapping structures and not have to worry about like positioning, etc.
Yeah, because I would always, with Flexbox, I'd always be like, randomly putting like, okay, I have to do a position relative and I have to mess with the Z index because one isn't on top of the other based on the media query that I need or something. And then just moving it. Oh, no. Okay, sorry.
To answer the second part of that question, like I said earlier, we're currently planning a few different launches for a few subsequent launches after this initial iteration of Grid. We wanted to get this feature out to users as soon as possible, and so we only built a subset of all of the CSS Grid features. And the next following releases will include additional enhancements, yet again also powered by CSS Grid. Grid areas is one of them, and we're currently exploring that. But if you wanted a quick demo, what I can show you here is, actually, do I have anything in here? No. So what I can do is I can add a div block. Oops. Oh, it looks like I already do. Okay. Give me a second, everyone.
Yep, that's fine.
So as you can see, what we can do here is add things called grid areas. Grid areas are, it's an interesting concept. It just allows us to create kind of like segments in a design. They're not containers necessarily, but they just define areas in which you can add content into.
Okay.
So for example, I'm going to create an area. I've already pre-created some areas here. I'm going to rename this area to contents. And then I'm actually going to just have this area span across the rest of this grid. And once I exit this, when I drag in something like a nav bar, I essentially have these predefined areas that I can just drag things into. So this is really great for creating full on-page layouts. It's really great for creating reusable layouts as well. But it is something that isn't going to be there in early October, but we'll figure out the best way to incorporate it in one of the following releases.
Wow. So yeah, I mean the first release is already really awesome, and then this is just going to take it to another level. So yeah, I mean the launch isn't the end. There's so much more to do. I actually didn't see this part of the demo, so I'm like, what is going on? Thank you for the question, Matt. Let's keep going. Yeah. Oh, I like this one. From Lindsey Gee. How is Grid different than using a table? So, back in my day, with the iframes, we had to use tables and cells and divs and no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so it feels like a Grid is kind of like the old school tables. And so, how is this different than the old school tables?
I have to be honest with you. I've never really played with CSS tables.
I mean, no, HTML tables.
Oh, HTML tables. I'm sorry. HTML tables. So I can't answer this question fully. All I know is that with Grid, it's much more flexible and much easier to use and much better in terms of making the grid itself responsive.
So back when I was doing HTML1 or something, back in GeoCities days, I remember making tables for everything, and especially for IE6, you know?
So what sucked about it?
What sucked is that, you know, you would have to make so many different tags for each column, and there was no such thing as responsive, and so we didn't have to worry about that. But I think the biggest difference between old school table and Grid is the fact that Grid is meant for responsiveness and that you can drag elements to other places depending on the media query, and it won't ruin your code. It won't make your design inside of Webflow even more complicated. It's just more fun and it feels more fluid. So that's how I would answer that one.
Thank you, Nelson.
No problem. I'm old. All right. I think we've already answered that one. Let's see here. Will there be a recorded version of this to revisit by any chance? Yes, John, you can go to the same link on Crowdcast. You can go to youtube.com/webflow, subscribe to the channel. It'll be there. Yeah. Simon is asking, oh yeah, when can I has it? I think this is a cat. But yeah, October, right? Sometime in October. Okay, so let's see here. From Robinson, can you explain the process of handing off to a client with Webflow?
Do you mean handing it off like via the editor or handing off like the entire project, do you think?
I like that one, the first one. Like, how does it work in the CMS editor? Have you guys gone through that yet?
It should work in the same way. All of the text fields should still continue to be editable, but the actual like rearrangement of these blocks are not. And so, yeah, the user should still feel the same experience in terms of editing text content and images.
Okay, cool. So they just click on a text and change it, and that's it. So still work in the CMS editor. Thank you, Robinson.
And yet again, in terms of actually transferring the project entirely to a client, we're hoping that because the grid uses these basic concepts of rows and columns, it'd be more easily understood by them in terms of how to move things around compared to something like Flexbox.
Yeah, oh yeah, most definitely, I think we already answered that, Mubrak. Overlapping elements. Release date, we already talked about that. I think that's about a couple sites. Okay, from Simon's asking, I have a couple sites where I've built a design system around Flexbox. Would it make sense to convert it to Grid? Do you have any ballpark estimates of such an endeavor?
Yeah, just repeat, Flexbox is a really great layout system, and it's really great for specific layouts. And some of the components in your design system might make sense for Grid. In terms of how much time it'll take for you to convert, it honestly depends on the complexity of each of these components and the number of components that you have. You might find that converting some of them into a grid will make it easier to maintain it and make changes to it in the future. But yet again, if it's working perfectly for you in Flex today, there's no reason for you to have to switch to Grid.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you, Simon. We already answered that one. Here we go. From Matthew is asking, in CSS Grid, can the flow of content be controlled, or is it always left to right, top to bottom?
I'm not sure what he means with that question. Well, in terms of this version of the grid, we currently only allow explicit positioning. That means that we know the exact column and row each item is in. CSS Grid also offers this feature called auto placement or auto flow, and that's where all the items kind of flow together within the grid from left to right, top to bottom.
Okay.
And that direction can change using CSS Grid. You can reverse it so that it's the opposite way, or it goes from horizontal to vertical.
Okay.
But autoflow is something that we're looking to add into or enhance our feature with in one of the next feature releases.
Okay, so not on launch, but
not on launch, it's a future release, yes. Okay. So just stay tuned and you'll start seeing Grid enhance over the next few months.
Cool. All right. Let's see here. Do you have any other site examples that have been built using Grid?
Not here, ready, available for you. But with the launch, we're actually pairing it with a handful of clonable sites. That'll showcase a lot of different layouts that you can create, and you can learn. Hopefully, you can learn and even use these clonable sites for your own purposes.
And that's what I love about that aspect of Webflow alone is amazing, because it's such a great way for people like me who like hands-on learning. I just want to reverse engineer the thing. If I see something cool, like when Ryan, our lead brand designer, and JP recreated Webflow.com's homepage, I was like, I want to reverse engineer. I want to see how it's done. And so I'm able to look at the read only, and there's a bunch of these websites that our community has made or our own internal team has made that you can clone and learn on your own. So that's going to come with this release. So that's really awesome. Answered that one already. So here we go. So Milan, who's watching on YouTube, will there be an option for custom media queries anytime soon? I think we've answered that many a time.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
I agree. The grid layouts will benefit a lot from that. My advice to everyone is to go to that wish list and keep upvoting. We do take the votes that you put into the wish list very seriously in terms of our prioritization. And we will hopefully get to it as soon as we can.
Yep. All right. Where did that one go? Nope. So yeah, we already answered that one, Mark. When we're gonna release it. I think that's about it. Yeah, a lot of these are just repeats and other. So I don't think we'll be answering any other questions about other features that you're probably not on the team with, right? Or do you think
no, it's not.
Okay. We already did that. Lenny, you have a meeting to go to. Yeah, it'll be viewable later. Let's try this one. Derek is asking, rather than adding a certain number of grid items, is it possible to use the repeat notation?
A really good question. So for those who don't know, the repeat notation is a feature in CSS Grid that allows you to essentially define one column or one row and use that repeat notation to essentially repeat that column X amount of times. So instead of having to create you know, 6 columns, each of equal width, you
Yeah.
can just go 1 column and say repeat 6 times.
Oh, okay.
Repeat Notion's also really cool with some of the more advanced CSS Grid features like auto fit, which is amazing, and I'm not going to explain this now, maybe in a future workshop once we have that feature, in terms of making something responsive.
Okay.
In terms of the repeat notation, we are planning to support it. Yeah, again, not in this initial release, but in one of our subsequent releases a few weeks after the first launch.
Okay. All right. I think we already answered that one. And we already answered that one, but I'll just answer it again. Landon, can you bring up Can I Use?
Yep.
Yep. So Landon, again, is asking what browsers are compatible with Grid. And as you can see here, Opera Mini and IE 11 are the only ones that don't have support. But all the major browsers, major modern browsers, are already using it. So yeah. Okay, we already answered that one. So I think all these questions are starting to overlap, and they're all the same. So I guess that's it. Can you answer my question? It has 4 upvotes. I don't see your question, Toby. Hold on. Let me see. It has 0 upvotes. You asked Toby, to what degree will the editor role be able to change things in the grid? Just the text and images.
At this point, yeah, the same abilities that they have now, text and images.
Yeah, they won't be able to reposition anything because that's more of a art direction type of deal that you as a designer should be making the call on. You don't want to give the design power to your client if they don't understand why they would need to put a box in one area rather than the other. So yeah. Hopefully that answers your question, Toby. Yeah. I think that's, so yeah, I think, okay, maybe this one. Skylar is asking, what are the different options for sizing grid elements? Will the amount of columns change if you reach a maximum/minimum similar to Wrap Children in Flex? So, is there like a maximum amount for, I'm guessing, rows and columns? Like, is there a max?
So for the grid that you'll be seeing in the early October release, you'll be defining explicit number of columns and rows. So those won't change based on the container size. Though, like I said, you can move elements around and delete columns and rows as needed for the different media queries.
Mm-hmm.
In the feature with the autoflow, which is a more advanced part of CSS Grid, you might see some more, I guess, magic, mind you, in terms of being able to have columns just magically go away in order to fit inside of the container, so that each grid item has enough space inside of that container.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
I'm being a little bit vague just because it's something that's coming in a future release, and hopefully we'll be able to better explain it then.
Okay. I think that's about it. Let's wrap it up. If there's no other questions that are ones that we already answered. Ooh, this is a good one. Okay, this is a good one. If a client enters too much text in a box, does the box increase in size, or does the text reduce in size? So I think I saw you put inside of one of the grid areas, you put a paragraph element, and then it just went too far and nothing moved.
Right.
So
so it depends on what he means by box. Is it a cell or the div block that goes into the box? But in my example, into the cell. So the cells aren't actually containers, right? They're imaginary guidelines almost that places your items. And so so if content you put in there overflows, it would just overflow out. Same thing if you add a div block into the cell and then add some paragraph content in there.
Yeah.
If it's too much content, it will overflow out. But you'll be able to select that div block and select overflow hidden, so that you can hide that content if it does overflow out.
Okay. So just for example, so can you place a paragraph in there just so people can see?
Yes. So another
Just a
paragraph.
new paragraph. And then you put it there, and so boom, it overflowed, but it's being hidden.
It's being hidden right now because on this div block, I actually turn on overflow hidden. But if I made it visible, you actually see it override
Okay,
pass.
so these are just imaginary guides, and it doesn't actually push it down. It doesn't push down all the other boxes.
No, it doesn't. So if I move this pink block here, shoot. Sorry, guys.
Right there.
Right
Okay.
there, it'll
Yeah.
actually go on top.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. And then you can like easily just drag down those anchor, the corner things.
Exactly, to make it fit.
To make
if
it
you
fit.
need to.
And then there
Sorry,
you go.
my computer is being a little bit laggy.
Okay, there it goes. So yeah, so it'll do that. Good question, Paul. I think that's about it. Let me just quickly scroll through. Yeah, that's about it. So thank you. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you,
That
Nelson.
was really fun. Yeah, so go ahead, everyone, take a breather now, and this is coming out, no, not beginning of October, what was it?
Early October.
So beginning of October, so it's really soon. We're already in the middle of September, so not too far away.
A bit nervous, a bit excited at the same time.
As we all are, because we want to make sure that we take care of you, the community, because we want you to build awesome things inside of Webflow, and this is just another way we're trying to help empower you designers to make awesome, unique layouts that are like, you know, not very. We want you to show off what you can do, and if you build something inside of Grid, inside of Webflow, please tweet it at us. Let us see it, and we want to share it with the world because we're always impressed with what you do. To Linda, product manager of the CSS Grid inside of Webflow team, thank you so much for building this, working on this, and taking the time to give us a demo
No worries.
and answering the questions. This is so much fun. Thank you all who are watching the live stream or watching the recording. Let's just go through our regular sign-off. So if you need any account billing or technical help, please contact us at university.webflow.com/contact. I and the rest of the customer success team will help you out as soon as we can. Please go to forum.webflow.com if you have a design or custom code question. Ask your question there. The very, very helpful community there will help you out. And do me a favor, if you get your question answered there, please pass that favor forward and answer someone else's question so we can all grow together. This stream happens every other Tuesday at 10 a.m. On our YouTube channel, on Crowdcast, and on Facebook. So if you're not subscribed to those three things, please do so now. Other social media channels, we're on Instagram at Webflow app. On Twitter, we're on, I need to update that. We're on Webflow, not Webflow app anymore. We're just Webflow on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at The Pixel Geek. What else? Oh, next week, live Q&A session with our CEO, Vlad. Every quarter, at the end of quarter, he answers your question live. So if you want to talk about stuff like Grid or any other upcoming features or the history of Webflow, he will be here live to answer your questions. So yeah, next Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific, be here. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, and thanks to the CSS Grid inside of Webflow, make the web beautiful. See ya.